People mistake calm for weakness. I learned that early in patrol work. The louder someone gets, the less control they actually have. Real danger doesn't announce itself with raised voices or dramatic gestures. It sits quietly in the passenger seat, checking its phone, waiting for the right moment. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I was thinking about that when Leo asked me why Mrs. Thorne always smiled when she was angry. Does she? I adjusted the rearview mirror, watching him in his booster seat. 5 years old, already reading people better than most adults I worked with. Yesterday, when you said we couldn't stay for dinner. He pressed his palm against the window, leaving a small handprint on the glass. Her mouth smiled, but her eyes didn't. Some people do that, I said. We were 3 blocks from his school. Tuesday morning traffic crawled through the intersection ahead. It's just a grown-up thing. You don't. I don't what? Smile when you're angry. You just get quiet. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. I'd noticed that same expression on Beatrice Thorne's face, the one Leo described, but I'd written it off as my own paranoia. Single fathers don't get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to reading social cues. We're either overprotective or oblivious, never just observant. The radio crackled. Dispatch calling for available units near Riverside. Nothing urgent, just a welfare check that could wait until after drop-off. I reached for the handset anyway. Old habit, then stopped. Leo was watching me in the mirror. You have to go to work? Not yet. School first. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to watching the neighborhood slide past. Houses with neat lawns and basketball hoops. The kind of area where people called the police about suspicious vehicles, by which they meant any car they didn't recognize. I'd taken a dozen calls like that in the past year alone. Beatrice lived 4 streets over, close enough to help with Leo, far enough to maintain the fiction of healthy boundaries. She'd started appearing at my house 3 months after my wife left, showing up with casseroles, offering to watch Leo while I worked late shifts. Genuine kindness, I'd thought then. The kind neighbors provide when someone's life falls apart in plain view. Now I wasn't sure what it was. I packed your lunch, I said as we pulled into the school lot. Apple slices, not the squeeze pouch. Mrs. Thorne says the pouches are better because they have vitamins. There it was again, Mrs. Thorne says. She'd been saying a lot lately, and Leo had been listening. I couldn't pinpoint when her suggestions had shifted from helpful to corrective, but somewhere along the way, my decisions had become insufficient. I walked him to the entrance, watching as he joined the stream of kids funneling through the double doors. His backpack was too big for him. I'd meant to get a smaller one, but kept forgetting. Add it to the list of things Beatrice would notice and mention with that careful smile. My phone buzzed as I crossed back to the cruiser. Text from her. Stopped by this morning, but you'd already left. Want to take Leo this weekend? Give you a break. I stared at the message. She had a key, emergency purposes only, we'd agreed, but I hadn't given her permission to use it whenever she felt like it. And give you a break felt less like an offer and more like commentary on my fitness as a parent. I typed back, thanks, but we have plans. We didn't have plans. I just needed space to think without her hovering at the edges of my decisions. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, of course, just trying to help. He seems tired lately. He wasn't tired. He was 5. 5-year-olds ran at 2 speeds, chaos, and unconscious. But she'd planted the seed now, the implication that I wasn't noticing something important about my own son. The rest of my shift unfolded like most Tuesdays: paperwork, a fender bender on Highway 12, a noise complaint that resolved itself before I arrived. Routine work, the kind that lets your mind wander into places it shouldn't go. I kept thinking about Leo's observation. Her mouth smiled, but her eyes didn't. Beatrice had been a nurse for 30 years before retiring. ICU, mostly. The kind of job that requires absolute control over your emotional presentation. You don't survive 3 decades in that environment without learning to manage your face, your tone, your entire external presence, which meant that smile, the one Leo noticed, was a choice, not a slip. By the time I picked Leo up at 3, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Beatrice was just overbearing, the way some older women got when they fixated on helping, annoying, maybe invasive, but not actually dangerous. I was a cop. I saw malice everywhere because that was the job. Didn't mean it existed in every interaction. Can we get pizza? Leo asked, already buckled into his seat. We had pizza Sunday. Mrs. Thorne says pizza's fine if you get thin crust. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Mrs. Thorne doesn't decide what we eat. He went quiet. That particular silence that meant I'd used the wrong tone. I softened my voice. How about tacos? Okay. But the moment had shifted. I'd snapped at him over nothing, and now the rest of the drive home would carry that tension. Exactly the kind of small failure Beatrice would somehow know about and catalog as evidence of something larger. The house looked normal when we pulled into the driveway. Front door closed, windows intact, nothing obviously disturbed. But I felt it anyway. That cop instinct that something was slightly wrong. Not danger exactly, just off. I checked the door. Locked. I'd locked it this morning, I was certain. Except now I wasn't certain, because doubt was easy to manufacture once it started. Inside, everything appeared untouched. Leo's toys where we'd left them, dishes from breakfast still in the sink, my uniform jacket on the back of the chair. Nothing missing, nothing added. Just the faint sense that someone had been standing in these rooms while we were gone. Go wash your hands, I told Leo. I'll start dinner. He disappeared down the hallway. I waited until I heard the bathroom door close, then checked the house properly. Not the casual walkthrough of a tired parent, but the systematic search of someone trained to spot disturbances. Closets, bedrooms, basement, everything normal except for one detail I almost missed. The photo album on the living room shelf was pulled out slightly, as if someone had been looking through it and didn't quite push it back into place. Maybe I'd done that myself. Maybe I was losing my mind. My phone rang. Beatrice. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Hi Jude, just checking in. I tried stopping by earlier but missed you. Wanted to talk about Leo's birthday next month. I have some ideas. Call me back when you get a chance. Leo's birthday wasn't for 6 weeks, and we'd already discussed it last week. Just family, nothing elaborate. So why was she bringing it up again? I deleted the message and started chopping vegetables for tacos, trying to focus on the ordinary rhythm of feeding my kid. But my mind kept snagging on small details. The pulled-out photo album, her text about him being tired, that smile Leo noticed. Dad? Leo appeared in the kitchen doorway, hands dripping wet because he never remembered to dry them properly. Yeah, buddy? Can Mrs. Thorne come to my birthday? There it was. She'd already talked to him about it. Planted the idea before discussing it with me. We'll see, I said, which was parent speak for probably not. He accepted this and wandered back toward his room. I heard him talking to himself, the running commentary kids maintain when they think no one's listening, something about superheroes and building a fort. My phone buzzed again, another text from Beatrice. Also, I've been thinking. Leo should probably see a pediatrician soon, just a checkup. I can take him if you're too busy with work. I set down the knife carefully. She was pushing, testing boundaries, seeing how much she could insert herself into decisions that weren't hers to make, and she was doing it with enough sweetness that objecting would make me look unreasonable. I typed back, he saw his pediatrician 2 months ago. He's fine. 3 dots. Then, of course. I just worry. You work such long hours. Another seed planted. Another implication that I was neglecting something crucial. Dinner was quiet. Leo picked at his tacos, asked if we could watch a movie, fell asleep on the couch halfway through. I carried him to bed, tucked him in, stood in his doorway longer than usual, watching him breathe. This small person who trusted me completely, who had no idea that adults could disguise harm as help. I was overreacting. Had to be. Back in the living room, I pulled out the photo album, the one that had been moved, flipped through pages of Leo as a baby, as a toddler, pictures from holidays and random Tuesdays. And there, near the back, photos from 2 years ago. Beatrice had been in the background of several, a peripheral presence even then. I'd never noticed how often she appeared, how she'd positioned herself at the edges of our life long before she became central to it. My phone lit up on the coffee table. Text from an unknown number. You should check your garage. I stared at the message. Prank? Threat? Mistake? I went to the garage. Hit the light. Everything looked normal. Tools on pegboards, storage bins stacked against the wall, Leo's bike with training wheels still attached. Except Leo's bike was facing the wrong direction. I always positioned it with the handlebars toward the wall. Now it faced outward, as if someone had been examining it. I checked the side door to the garage. Unlocked. I'd locked it this morning. I was certain. Except now I wasn't certain about anything. My phone rang again. Beatrice, 3rd time today. I answered. Jude, finally. Listen, I've been thinking about this weekend. Why don't you let me take Leo for a few days? You sound exhausted. You need rest. I'm fine. You say that, but Beatrice, I kept my voice level. I appreciate your concern, but Leo and I are fine. We don't need a break. Silence on her end. Long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then, of course, I understand. It's just, I've been talking to some people and they're worried about you. What people? Just friends from church. They've noticed you seem stressed. Leo, too. Leo is 5. He's not stressed. He told me yesterday that he wishes you were home more. That stopped me. Leo and I had talked about my work schedule, but he'd never expressed unhappiness about it. Not to me. When did you talk to him yesterday? Oh, just for a few minutes when I stopped by. You were in the shower, I think. The door was unlocked, so I let myself in. My jaw tightened. Beatrice, you can't just... I'm family, Jude. I'm practically his grandmother. You're not going to start treating me like a stranger, are you? The shift in her tone was subtle but unmistakable. Less concern, more accusation, as if I was the one being unreasonable. I need to go, I said. Wait, about this weekend? I hung up. Stood in the garage with my phone in my hand, trying to organize my thoughts into something coherent. She'd been in my house while I was in the shower, talking to Leo, moving things, testing locks. Or I was paranoid, inventing threats because my marriage had collapsed and I didn't trust anyone anymore. I went back inside, checked all the locks, set the alarm system I rarely bothered with. Then I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop, pulling up the department database. Basic background check, nothing invasive, just confirming what I already knew about Beatrice Thorne. Clean record, no flags, widowed 8 years ago, 1 sister in Arizona, retired from nursing with full honors, active in community organizations, the kind of person who looked perfect on paper. I was about to close the laptop when I noticed something in her employment history, a 6-month gap 20 years ago. Not suspicious on its own, people took breaks, but unusual for someone with her work ethic. I made a note of it, probably nothing. My phone buzzed one more time. Text from Beatrice. I love you both. Sleep well. I stared at those words until the screen went dark. Then I got up, checked Leo's room one more time, and locked my bedroom door from the inside. I woke up at 5:30 to silence. Not the normal quiet of early morning, but the specific absence of sound that meant something was missing. Leo's room was across the hall. I could usually hear him breathing through the thin walls, the small movements of a restless sleeper. Nothing now. I was out of bed before my brain fully processed the panic. His door stood open. Empty bed, covers pulled back neatly. Too neatly. Leo never made his bed, especially not at dawn. Bathroom empty. Living room empty. Kitchen empty. My service weapon was in the lockbox in my closet. I retrieved it with shaking hands, cleared each room methodically, forcing myself into the procedural mindset that kept cops functional during emergencies. Front door still locked from the inside, back door the same, windows secure, garage. The side door stood open, the one I'd found unlocked last night. Leo's bike was gone. I holstered the weapon and ran outside in my undershirt and jeans, no shoes, scanning the street in both directions. Dawn light turning everything gray and formless. No small figure on a bicycle. No movement except a neighbor's cat slinking between houses. My phone was still inside. I ran back, grabbed it, saw 3 missed calls from Beatrice, all between 5 and 5:15, and a text time stamped 4:47 a.m. Taking Leo on an adventure. Don't worry, we'll be back soon. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Same result. My hands wanted to shake, but I wouldn't let them. Training kicked in. When you can't control the situation, control yourself. I pulled up her contact information, found her address, grabbed my keys and badge. 17 minutes to her house. I made it in 11. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Lights off inside. I knocked anyway, hard enough that my knuckles complained. No answer. I tried the knob, locked, then circled to the back. Kitchen window showed an empty room, dishes in the sink, nothing obviously disturbed. I called my partner, Hayes. He answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. It's Sterling. I need you to run a plate for me. Jude? What time is it? Just run it. I gave him Beatrice's license number, heard him typing, the click of keys that meant he was taking this seriously despite the hour. Got it. Why are we tracking Beatrice Thorne at dawn? She took Leo. Pause. Took him where? I don't know. She sent a text at 4:47 saying they were going on an adventure. He was gone when I woke up. Did she take him or did she take him? He was asking if this was a custody situation or an abduction. Legal distinction, critical difference. She has no custody rights. She's not family. She's a neighbor who babysits sometimes. But she has a key to your house. Emergency purposes. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, listen to me carefully. You need to file a report. Make this official. Don't go looking for her yourself. Hayes, I'm serious. You're too close to this. Let me make some calls. We'll find them. He was right. I knew he was right. But every instinct I had was screaming to get in my car and drive until I spotted them. She's not answering her phone. We'll ping it. Give me 20 minutes to wake up a judge. Go home, wait for my call. I disconnected and stood in Beatrice's backyard, looking at her house like it might offer answers. Tidy garden beds, bird feeder, ceramic gnome by the back steps. The home of someone respectable and harmless. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Officer Sterling. Female voice. Older, uncertain. This is Margaret Chen. I live on Maple Street, near the elementary school. Yes? I'm sorry to call so early. I got your number from the community watch list. I saw something strange and wasn't sure who to contact. My pulse hammered. What did you see? About an hour ago, maybe a little more. I was up with my dog, she has trouble sleeping in her old age, and I saw a car parked on my street with a child in the back seat. Just sitting there, it seemed odd. What kind of car? Blue sedan. I wrote down the plate number because it made me nervous. Do you have a pen? I already knew what she was going to say. She recited Beatrice's license plate. The child, I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. What did he look like? Small, maybe 5 or 6. Dark hair. He was just staring out the window. The woman in the driver's seat. Older woman, gray hair. She kept turning around to talk to him. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but something about it felt wrong. The boy looked upset. Did you see which direction they went? East on Maple, toward the county line. That was about 45 minutes ago. Should I have called the police? You're calling them now. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I hung up and immediately called Hayes back. She's heading toward the county line, east on Maple, as of an hour ago. Jude, do not go after them. She's got him in a car, taking him somewhere. This isn't a misunderstanding. Which is exactly why you need to stay out of it. We'll issue a BOLO, we'll coordinate with county units, but if you find them first, anything you do becomes compromised. You understand? Your son's case gets thrown out because Dad went vigilante. I understood. Understanding didn't make it easier. Go home, Hayes said. Wait for my call. I'm mobilizing now. Home felt like surrender, but he was right about contaminating the case. If I found Beatrice and confronted her, every lawyer in the state would paint me as an unstable officer who couldn't separate personal feelings from professional conduct. Leo would end up in foster care while they sorted it out. I drove home and sat in my kitchen with my phone on the table, watching it like it might explode. Made coffee I didn't drink, checked the security footage I'd never bothered to set up, thought about all the small warnings I'd ignored because I wanted to believe people were decent. My phone rang at 7:15. Hayes. We found the car. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by dread at his tone. Where? Abandoned at a rest stop on Highway 9. Empty, no sign of either of them. What do you mean, abandoned? Car's there, keys in the ignition, Leo's bike in the trunk, but no Beatrice, no Leo. My mind stuttered trying to process that. Someone picked them up? Looks that way. We're reviewing security footage from the rest stop now. Units are canvassing the area. He paused. Jude, there's something else. We found a folder in the back seat. What kind of folder? Documentation. Medical records, school records, photographs, all concerning Leo, and a typed letter addressed to family court requesting emergency custody based on concerns about your fitness as a parent. The kitchen tilted. I gripped the counter. She was planning this. Yeah, this wasn't impulsive. We're getting a warrant for her house now. Captain wants you to come in, give a formal statement. I need to be out there looking for him. You need to let us do our jobs. Come to the station. We'll coordinate from here. The station felt surreal. People I worked with every day suddenly treating me like a victim instead of a colleague. Careful tones, gentle questions, everything designed to keep me calm and cooperative. I gave my statement to a detective from Family Services, recounted every interaction with Beatrice I could remember, provided the text messages. When did you first notice concerning behavior? The detective asked. Young guy, early 30s, probably had kids of his own based on the toy car keychain. Looking back, months ago, but I thought she was just overbearing. She kept offering to help, kept inserting herself into decisions about Leo. I thought it was annoying, not dangerous. Did she ever make specific threats? No, everything was phrased as concern, worry. She was good at making me feel like the problem. He nodded, wrote something down. We're going to find him. Beatrice Thorne doesn't have the resources to disappear permanently. Someone will spot them. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. Hayes found me in the break room an hour later. Got the security footage from the rest stop. I followed him to a monitor. Grainy black and white footage showed Beatrice's sedan pulling into a parking space at 6:03 a.m. She got out, walked around to the back door, helped Leo out. He looked small and confused. She held his hand, walked him toward the bathroom building, disappeared from frame. 7 minutes later, a white SUV pulled up next to Beatrice's car. Older woman got out, similar age to Beatrice, similar build. She checked her surroundings, then walked toward the bathroom. 9 minutes after that, the SUV left with Beatrice in the passenger seat and Leo in the back. Sister, Hayes said, Gloria Thorne, lives in Arizona. She drove through the night to meet them. We've got an APB out on the SUV now. Arizona? That was 15 hours away. Or she's just passing through, could be headed anywhere, but we're coordinating with Arizona State Police just in case. I watched the footage 3 more times, studying Leo's posture as Beatrice led him away from the car. He wasn't fighting her, wasn't crying, just walking beside her like this was normal. Like she'd convinced him somehow that leaving in the middle of the night was fine, was an adventure, was something to trust. Captain Morrison appeared in the doorway. Sterling, my office. I followed her down the hallway, past curious stares from patrol officers coming in for shift change. Her office was neat and functional, commendations on the wall, family photos on the desk. She closed the door. Sit. I sat. I'm putting you on administrative leave, effective immediately. Captain. This is non-negotiable. You're personally involved in an active investigation. You cannot work this case. You cannot work any case until this is resolved. I can help. I know Beatrice better than anyone. You think you know her. Clearly you didn't know her well enough. She softened slightly. Jude, I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting the integrity of the investigation. If you're on duty when we find them, everything gets complicated. Defense attorney would have a field day. She was right. I hated that she was right. We're going to find Leo, she said. Every officer in 3 counties is looking for that SUV. Highway Patrol has alerts at every toll booth and rest stop. She can't hide forever. I wanted to believe her. Back home, the house felt hostile. Leo's toys scattered in the living room, his cereal bowl still in the sink from yesterday morning, evidence of a normal life that had evaporated while I slept. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. He's safe. He's happy. He'll be better off. Don't look for us. I called the number, disconnected, texted back, bring him home. No response. I forwarded the message to Hayes, then sat at the kitchen table and tried to think like an investigator instead of a father. Beatrice had planned this. The folder of documentation proved that, which meant she had a destination in mind, a place she thought was safe, a support system that would help her disappear. Sister in Arizona. That was the obvious choice. But Beatrice was smarter than obvious. She'd know we'd check there first. I pulled up everything I could find about Gloria Thorne. Retired teacher, widowed, no children, active in a church community in Phoenix. Property records showed she owned a modest house in a suburb. Nothing that screamed hiding spot for an abducted child. But churches had resources, networks, people who believed they were helping rescue a child from an unfit parent. If Beatrice had spent months building that narrative, documenting my long work hours, my single-parent struggles, any small mistake she could frame as neglect, she could have a dozen people convinced they were doing the right thing by helping her. My phone rang. Hayes again. Border Patrol spotted the SUV crossing into New Mexico 2 hours ago. State police lost them near Albuquerque. New Mexico. Wrong direction for Arizona. Where's she going? We don't know yet, but we're coordinating with their units. They'll find her. Hayes. I kept my voice level. What aren't you telling me? Silence. Then, we executed the warrant on her house, found more documentation, letters she'd written but never sent to Child Protective Services, family court, even your captain, all detailing concerns about your parenting. Photographs of Leo that she'd annotated with dates and comments about his appearance. Bruises from normal kid stuff, but she'd labeled them as suspicious. She's been building a case against you for at least 6 months. My hands clenched into fists. Why didn't she just file the complaints? My guess. She knew they wouldn't hold up. You're a decorated officer. Leo's healthy and well-adjusted. There's no actual evidence of neglect. So she decided to take matters into her own hands. And now she's got him in another state, telling him God knows what about me. We'll find them, Jude. She has to stop eventually. She has to buy gas, food, use a credit card. The moment she does, we've got her. After he hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness and let myself acknowledge what I'd been avoiding. This wasn't a misunderstanding that would resolve itself. Beatrice genuinely believed she was saving Leo, which meant she'd fight to keep him, which meant this could go very wrong, very fast. My phone lit up again. Another text from the unknown number. You were never good enough for him. I can give him stability, a real family. Let him go. I stared at those words until they blurred. Then I opened my laptop and started mapping every connection Beatrice Thorne had in every state between here and the Pacific Ocean. They found Leo in a basement apartment in Taos, New Mexico, 72 hours after he disappeared. An anonymous tip called into the local precinct. Female voice, older, wouldn't give a name. Said there was a child being held at a specific address, that something wasn't right about the situation. I wasn't there when they went in. Captain Morrison made sure of that. I found out the same way any civilian would. A phone call from Hayes, professional tone barely masking relief. We have him. He's safe. Medical check shows he's unharmed. Social worker is with him now. I was in my car before he finished the sentence. I'm coming to get him. Jude, wait. There's procedure here. He needs to be evaluated. We need statements. There's paperwork. How long? 24 hours minimum, maybe 48. Captain wants everything documented properly so this doesn't fall apart in court. Every hour Leo spent away from me was another hour Beatrice's poison could work. But Hayes was right. Rushing this would only create problems later. Where is he now? Child Services Facility in Taos. They're taking good care of him. I've been in contact with the case manager. Leo's asking for you. That nearly broke me. I pulled over, gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. What about Beatrice? In custody. Not talking without a lawyer. But we've got enough to hold her. Custodial interference, child endangerment, crossing state lines. Federal charges are likely. And the sister? Pause. That's the interesting part. Gloria Thorne is the one who called in the tip. I processed that slowly. She turned her own sister in? Apparently she didn't know the full situation until they got to Taos. Beatrice told her you were abusive, that she was protecting Leo. But once they were there, Gloria started noticing inconsistencies. Leo wasn't afraid of you. He kept asking to call you. Beatrice's story kept changing. And when Gloria found the folder of documentation, she realized how obsessive it all was. That's when she made the call. Where's Gloria now? Cooperating fully. She's horrified. Says she thought she was helping rescue her nephew from a bad situation. Had no idea Beatrice had fabricated most of it. I leaned back against the headrest, trying to feel something other than rage. Gloria had been manipulated too. Beatrice had played her own sister the same way she'd played me, offering just enough truth mixed with lies that the overall picture seemed credible. The basement apartment, I said. What was that? Rental property Gloria owns. She wasn't living there, kept it vacant for family emergencies. That's where Beatrice took Leo. Apparently she'd been coaching him, teaching him what to say if anyone asked questions, how to describe living with you. The social worker says Leo was confused, kept contradicting himself because he was trying to remember Beatrice's script, but also telling the truth. My hands started shaking. I made them stop. I need to see him. I know. Captain's working on expediting the process. Best case, you can drive out tomorrow, bring him home the day after. But Jude, he's going to need help processing this. What she did to him, the things she probably told him about you, that's not going to just disappear. After we hung up, I sat in my parked car and let myself feel the full weight of the past 3 days. The panic, the helplessness, the certainty that every hour that passed made Leo harder to find. And underneath all of that, the rage at Beatrice for turning my son into a tool for her delusions. But there was something else too, a cold clarity that hadn't been there before. Beatrice had shown me exactly who she was, and in doing so, she taught me something valuable. Rules only protect you if everyone agrees to follow them. I drove to her house. Yellow crime scene tape across the door, official notices posted about the ongoing investigation. Neighbors were probably watching from behind curtains, collecting details for the gossip mill. Single father's kid gets abducted by helpful neighbor. That would fuel speculation for months. I didn't care about the neighbors. I parked across the street and studied the house. From the outside, it looked like a place where someone normal lived, but I'd learned that appearances were just another tool for people like Beatrice. She'd spent months constructing an image of concern while documenting every perceived failure of mine, building her case, her justification, her story about being the hero. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Gloria Thorne. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need you to understand. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I stared at the message for a long moment, then replied, Did she plan this for months or years? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I think years. She talked about Leo constantly, how worried she was, how you worked too much, how he needed stability. I thought she was just being protective. Looking back, it was obsession. Did she ever say what she planned to do? She said she wanted to save him. That's all she would say. Save him from what? She never specified. I kept asking questions, and she'd change the subject. When we got to Taos and I saw how she'd set up the apartment, bedroom for Leo, school supplies, clothes in his size, I realized she'd been planning to keep him. Permanently. I looked at the house again, imagining Beatrice inside making lists, collecting evidence, convinced she was doing the right thing, the righteous delusion of someone who'd lost touch with reality but maintained enough control to hide it. Thank you for calling it in, I texted back. It doesn't make up for bringing him there. But I couldn't let it continue. She's my sister and I love her, but she needs help. Real help. I didn't respond to that. Gloria's relationship with Beatrice wasn't my problem anymore. The next morning, Captain Morrison called me into her office. I'd spent the night alternating between pacing and researching custody law, trying to understand what came next. You can leave for Taos in 2 hours, she said. Social worker cleared Leo for release to your custody. You'll need to bring documentation, birth certificate, custody papers, your badge for identification. They're being thorough. What about Beatrice? Being held pending arraignment. Federal prosecutor is building the case. It's solid. We've got surveillance footage, Gloria's testimony, the documentation she left in the car, and Leo's statements corroborate that she took him without permission. She paused. There's something else you should know. We searched her computer, found drafts of letters she never sent, some to Child Protective Services, some to your superiors, and some to Leo. To Leo? Letters she planned to give him when he was older, explaining why she had to take him away from you. They're disturbing. She genuinely believed you were incapable of raising him properly, that she was his only hope for a normal life. I absorbed that. She was building a narrative where she's the hero. Yes, and she'd convinced herself so thoroughly that she couldn't see how wrong it was. The psychologist who evaluated her used the term delusional disorder. She's not insane in the legal sense, but her perception of reality is severely distorted when it comes to you and Leo. Will that help her defense? Probably, but it doesn't change what she did. She crossed state lines with a minor child without permission. That's federal. She's looking at serious time regardless of her mental state. I should have felt satisfaction at that. Instead, I just felt tired. I need to go get my son. One more thing. Morrison's expression shifted to something harder. When you bring him home, there's going to be attention. People asking questions, media potentially. You handle this quietly and by the book, understand? No statements, no interviews, nothing that compromises the case. I just want my life back. I know. But Beatrice has friends, connections. Some of them might believe her version of events. You need to be prepared for pushback. She was warning me that this wasn't over, that even with Beatrice in custody and Leo coming home, the damage she'd done would ripple outward. The drive to Taos took 8 hours. I made it in 7, pushing the speed limit on empty stretches of highway. High desert landscape, all red rock and vast sky. Beautiful in an indifferent way that matched my mood. The child services facility was a low building on the edge of town, designed to look friendly and non-threatening. I checked in at the front desk, showed my documentation, waited in a room with educational posters about stranger awareness and calling 911. Then the door opened and Leo walked in with a social worker. He stopped when he saw me. For one terrible moment I thought he might not come closer, that Beatrice had poisoned him against me completely. But then he ran, and I caught him, and he was solid and real and safe. "Dad," he said into my shoulder, "I want to go home." "We're going home right now." The social worker, middle-aged woman with kind eyes, gave me paperwork to sign. "He's been remarkably resilient," she said quietly while Leo examined the posters. Some confusion about the situation, but no signs of trauma. Mrs. Thorne didn't harm him physically. Psychologically, we'll need to monitor. I'm recommending therapy. Whatever he needs. There's something you should know. He asked about her, about Mrs. Thorne. He's worried she's in trouble because of him. I looked at Leo, who was pretending not to listen. What did you tell him? That she made some mistakes, but none of it was his fault. That sometimes adults do things that seem like they're helping, but actually cause harm. He seemed to accept that, but he'll probably have more questions. On the drive home, Leo was quiet for the first hour. Then, "Mrs. Thorne said you were too busy to take care of me." I kept my eyes on the road, my voice steady. "Did you believe her? Sometimes you work a lot." "I do work a lot, but I'm never too busy for you. You know that, right?" "Yeah." Pause. "Is she going to come back?" "No, she's not allowed to see you anymore. What she did, taking you without asking me, that's not okay. Even when someone thinks they're helping, they can't just take kids away from their parents." "She said she was saving me." "Saving you from what?" He shrugged. "She never said exactly, just that things would be better with her." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Beatrice had planted seeds of doubt without giving him concrete reasons, making him uneasy about our life without explaining why. Sophisticated manipulation for a 5-year-old to navigate. "Did she ever hurt you?" I asked carefully. "No, she was nice. But she kept asking me questions about you, about what you did when you were home, if you ever got angry, if I was scared of anything. I told her no, but she kept asking." Building her case. Using Leo's own words against me, twisting normal parenting moments into evidence of inadequacy. "You did nothing wrong," I said, "and you can ask me anything you want about what happened. I'll always tell you the truth." He nodded, then fell asleep against the window. I drove through the darkness, heading home, trying to figure out how to rebuild normal when someone had worked so hard to destroy it. The whispers started 3 days after we got home. I noticed them at the grocery store first, 2 women from the neighborhood watch committee stopping mid-conversation when I turned down their aisle. Sympathetic smiles that didn't reach their eyes. One of them touched my arm as I passed. "We're so glad Leo's safe," she said. "It must have been terrifying." "It was, thank you." "And Beatrice seemed so normal. You just never know with people." But her tone suggested something else, a question mark hiding in the sympathy. Leo was in school, his first day back. The principal had called me in that morning for a private conversation about supporting him through the transition. She'd been professional, concerned, but I caught the scrutiny in her expression, evaluating whether I was stable enough to handle this, whether maybe Beatrice had been right about some things, even if her methods were wrong. That afternoon, I found the letter in my mailbox. No return address, local postmark, handwritten on expensive stationery. Officer Sterling. We were friends of Beatrice for many years. We know she made terrible mistakes, but we also know she genuinely cared about Leo's welfare. Perhaps there's truth in both perspectives. We hope you'll consider what drove her to such desperate measures. Sometimes concern manifests in misguided ways. With prayers for your family, the Riverside Community Church Fellowship. I read it twice, then a third time. The language was careful, diplomatic, but the message was clear. They thought I bore some responsibility for what happened, that Beatrice's concerns, however extreme her response, had validity. My phone buzzed. Text from Hayes. "Need to talk. Coffee?" 20 minutes later, we sat in a booth at the diner near the station. Hayes looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for someone normally unflappable. "There's been talk," he said. "I've noticed. Some of Beatrice's friends are pushing back. Quietly, but pushing. They're saying she was legitimately worried about Leo. That maybe she went too far, but her instincts weren't wrong. Her instincts told her to abduct my son and take him across state lines. I know, and legally that's what matters. But perception-wise, this is getting messy. These people are influential. Church leaders, community organizers, the types who write letters to city council." I drank my coffee. It was terrible, as always. "What do they want?" "I think they want you to admit some fault. Acknowledge that you work too much, that Leo needed more attention, that Beatrice had legitimate concerns even if she expressed them criminally." "And if I don't?" Hayes grimaced. "Then they'll keep talking, keep suggesting there's more to the story. They can't touch you legally. The case against Beatrice is solid, but they can make your life uncomfortable. Let them. Jude. I'm not apologizing for being a single parent who works to support his kid. I'm not validating her delusions just to make her supporters feel better about backing the wrong person. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying be prepared for this to get worse before it gets better." He was right, of course. That evening, I found another letter, this one more pointed. "Officer Sterling, children need stability. They need present parents. Leo deserved better than being raised by someone married to their work." Beatrice saw what others were too polite to mention. Her methods may have been flawed, but her motivations were pure. Perhaps this tragedy could have been avoided if you'd listened to her concerns earlier. A concerned neighbor. I burned it in the kitchen sink and watched the ash float down the drain. Leo came downstairs, backpack trailing behind him. There were whispers at school today. What kind of whispers? Kids saying Mrs. Thorne got arrested because of me, that I got her in trouble. I knelt down to his level. Mrs. Thorne got in trouble because of choices she made, not because of you, not because of anything you did or didn't do. Adults are responsible for their own actions. But if I hadn't told Aunt Gloria I wanted to call you, then Aunt Gloria wouldn't have realized something was wrong. You did exactly the right thing. Always. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. Beatrice's manipulation was still working even from a jail cell in New Mexico. She'd positioned herself as the caring martyr, painted me as the neglectful father, and now her narrative was spreading through the community like rot through wood. My captain called me into her office the next morning. We've received complaints. About what? Your fitness to serve. Anonymous letters suggesting you're emotionally compromised, unstable, possibly a danger to yourself or others. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That's her friends. I know, and I'm not entertaining them. You've done nothing wrong professionally. But I need you aware that this campaign exists. They're trying to damage your reputation because they can't defend hers. What do you want me to do? Keep your head down. Don't engage. Let the legal system handle Beatrice while you focus on Leo. Eventually this will fade. But it didn't fade. Over the next week, small acts of harassment appeared. My trash cans knocked over, garbage scattered across the lawn. Packages left on my porch addressed to Beatrice with notes, "We miss you. You did nothing wrong. We're praying for you." Someone left a children's book on my doorstep titled, "When Parents Work Too Much." The inscription read, "For Leo, with love from those who truly see him." I called Hayes. "This is escalating. File reports, document everything. But Jude, don't retaliate. That's what they want. They want you to lose control so they can say Beatrice was right. So I just accept this. You outlast it. These people will get bored eventually. Beatrice's case is proceeding. Her lawyer already tried a mental health defense and the prosecutor shut it down. She's going away. Once that's final, her supporters will find something else to care about." I wanted to believe him, but I'd learned that people committed to a narrative didn't let go easily. They'd invested too much in believing Beatrice was a concerned hero rather than a delusional manipulator. Admitting they were wrong meant admitting they'd supported something terrible. That Saturday, I took Leo to the park, tried to give him one normal afternoon. He played on the swings while I sat on a bench nearby, watching for threats that might materialize from sympathetic neighbors with toxic agendas. A woman approached, late 50s, well-dressed, carrying an expensive purse. I recognized her from Beatrice's church. "Officer Sterling?" "Yes." "I'm Caroline Hughes. I was a friend of Beatrice's." She sat down without invitation. "I wanted to speak with you privately." "I have nothing to say to you. Please, just listen for a moment." She folded her hands in her lap. Beatrice loved that boy. She truly believed she was helping him. I'm not excusing what she did. She broke the law and must face consequences. But I knew her for 20 years. She wasn't a monster. She abducted my son. She made a terrible mistake driven by genuine concern. Perhaps if you'd been more receptive to her feedback earlier. I stood up. "This conversation is over." "I'm trying to help you understand. You're trying to make me complicit in her delusion." "It won't work," I called to Leo. "Time to go." Caroline stood as well, her expression hardening. "You should know that many in our community support Beatrice. We believe she deserves compassion, not condemnation, and we question whether Leo is truly safe with someone so defensive and aggressive. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you that people are watching. If Leo shows any signs of distress, if there are any concerns about his welfare, we won't hesitate to contact the proper authorities." She walked away before I could respond. Leo ran over, confused by the tension. Who was that? Nobody important. But she was important. She represented a coordinated effort to rehabilitate Beatrice's image while undermining mine. They couldn't free her from prison, but they could poison the community against me. Make my life difficult enough that I'd want to leave. I wasn't leaving. That night, I did something I'd avoided until now. I researched Beatrice's past more thoroughly. Not just the basic background check, but deeper. Social media archives, old news articles, employment records. The 6-month gap in her nursing career 2 decades ago led to something interesting. Hospital records from that period, accessible through some creative database searches Hayes helped with, showed a disciplinary investigation. A patient's family had complained about Beatrice becoming inappropriately attached to their teenage daughter, visiting outside work hours, bringing gifts, questioning their parenting decisions. The investigation concluded without formal charges. Beatrice had resigned voluntarily and moved to a different hospital. The family hadn't pursued it further, but the pattern was there. She'd done this before. Found someone she perceived as needing rescue, inserted herself into their life, crossed boundaries until it became untenable. Leo was just the most recent version, except this time she'd escalated to abduction. I compiled everything into a file, sent copies to the prosecutor handling her case, to my captain, to the family court judge overseeing the custody aspects, created a narrative that showed this wasn't a one-time mistake of a concerned neighbor, but a pattern of behavior spanning decades. If her supporters wanted a war of perception, I'd fight back with facts. 2 days later, I found my car tires slashed. All 4 clean cuts that made it clear this was deliberate. No cameras in my driveway to catch who did it. No witnesses willing to come forward. I called Hayes. He came over with a patrol unit, took a report, helped me file for a restraining order against Caroline Hughes and her church fellowship group. It wouldn't stop them completely, but it would make them think twice. "This is coordinated harassment," Hayes said, photographing the damage. "You could press charges." "Against who?" "We don't have proof." "We have a pattern. That's enough to make their lives complicated." I considered it, making things difficult for them the way they were making things difficult for me, but escalating into tit-for-tat retaliation felt like descending to their level. "Not yet," I said. "Let's see if the restraining order works first." That night, Leo had nightmares for the first time since coming home. Woke up crying, saying Mrs. Thorne was calling him, telling him to come back. I sat with him until dawn, letting him talk through the confusion and fear. "She said you didn't want me," he whispered. "That I was too much work." "That's not true. You're never too much work. You're my son. You're the most important thing in my life." Then why was she so sure? That was the question I couldn't answer adequately. How do you explain delusion to a 5-year-old? How do you make him understand that sometimes people believe things so strongly that reality stops mattering? "Sometimes grown-ups get confused," I said finally. "They think they see problems that aren't really there. Mrs. Thorne thought she saw problems with how we lived, but she was wrong. She just couldn't accept that she was wrong." "Is she going to keep trying?" "No, she's not allowed to contact us anymore, ever." He fell asleep eventually, curled against my side. I stayed awake, thinking about Caroline Hughes and her fellowship group, about the slashed tires and threatening letters, about Beatrice sitting in a cell, probably still convinced she'd done the right thing. They wanted me broken. Wanted me to crumble under the pressure so they could say Beatrice's concerns were justified. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. The trap required patience. That was the hardest part. Waiting while Beatrice's supporters continued their campaign, while letters arrived suggesting I was unfit, while Leo came home from school with stories about classmates repeating things their parents said. Waiting while she sat in custody, probably convinced time would vindicate her. I spent 2 weeks building the case properly, not the criminal case. The prosecutor was handling that with efficiency. This was different. This was about making sure Beatrice never touched our lives again, legally or otherwise. Hayes helped, though he didn't know the full scope of what I was assembling. "You're being thorough," he said one afternoon, reviewing documents I'd requested through official channels. "Most people would just let the system handle it." "The system protects process, not people." He gave me a look that suggested he understood more than I was saying. "Just stay inside the lines." I stayed inside the lines. Barely. The first move was civil court. I filed for a permanent restraining order. Not just against Beatrice, but against her known associates who'd been harassing us. Caroline Hughes, 3 other members of her church fellowship, Gloria Thorne, though she'd cooperated because I couldn't risk her changing her mind later. The filings included every piece of documentation I'd collected, the threatening letters, photos of vandalism, screenshots of social media posts from Beatrice's supporters suggesting I was dangerous, phone records showing call patterns that constituted stalking, everything organized, cross-referenced, undeniable. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in family protection cases, reviewed the documents with professional appreciation. "This is comprehensive. The judge will approve it." I need more than approval. I need it airtight. Restraining orders are always somewhat flexible in enforcement, but with this much evidence, any violation will result in immediate consequences. They'll know that. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday. I took the day off, dressed in my uniform to remind everyone exactly who I was. Leo stayed with a court-appointed supervisor, someone neutral who could testify if needed about his well-being. Caroline Hughes showed up with her fellowship group. They sat in the back of the courtroom, a unified front of righteous conviction. She met my eyes once with a look that suggested this was all unnecessary persecution. The judge, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for not tolerating nonsense, reviewed the filings in silence. Then she looked at Caroline's group. "Is there anyone here representing the respondents?" Caroline stood. "Your Honor, we're not represented because we've done nothing wrong. Officer Sterling is retaliating against people who dared to question his parenting. Ms. Hughes, you're named in multiple police reports documenting harassment. You left a package on his doorstep after being explicitly told not to contact him. You approached him in a public park to deliver what he perceived as veiled threats. Would you like to dispute these facts?" "I was trying to facilitate dialogue by leaving anonymous letters and vandalizing property. I never vandalized anything." The judge looked back at the documents. "The restraining order petition doesn't claim you personally vandalized his car. It claims you're part of a coordinated effort to harass him in support of Beatrice Thorne, who is currently awaiting trial for custodial interference. The evidence suggests this is accurate." She granted every request. Permanent restraining orders for all named parties. No contact, no proximity within 500 feet, no third-party communication. Violation would result in immediate arrest. Caroline's expression shifted from righteous to shocked. "Your Honor, this is excessive. What's excessive is grown adults engaging in a campaign to intimidate a police officer because his son's abductor was your friend. These orders are effective immediately. Bailiff, please ensure all respondents understand the terms before they leave." Outside the courtroom, Patricia pulled me aside. That was better than expected. Judge Morrison doesn't usually go that hard on first-time orders. She saw what they were doing. "She also saw your documentation. That made the difference. Most people show up with a few text messages and hope for the best. You showed up with a pattern." The criminal case proceeded in parallel. Beatrice's lawyer tried multiple approaches. Mental health defense, arguing she believed Leo was in danger, claiming her obsession was a symptom of untreated anxiety disorder. The prosecutor dismantled each argument methodically. Gloria Thorne testified. She sat in the witness box looking smaller than I remembered, her voice steady but pained as she described how Beatrice had manipulated her. She told me Jude was neglectful, that Leo came to school hungry, exhausted, that he had bruises she couldn't explain. I believed her because she's my sister, and she was a nurse. Why would she lie about a child's welfare? "Did you ever verify these claims?" the prosecutor asked. "No, I trusted her. That was my mistake." "When did you realize she was lying?" "When we got to Taos and I watched how she interacted with Leo. She wasn't comforting a traumatized child. She was coaching him, telling him what to say if anyone asked questions. And Leo kept asking about his father. Not with fear, but with confusion. Like he didn't understand why he couldn't call home." The defense attorney tried to shake her testimony during cross-examination. "But you did transport them across state lines. You did provide housing. You participated in this situation." "I thought I was helping protect my nephew. The moment I realized I was wrong, I contacted the authorities. That's why Leo is safe now." Gloria looked at me when she stepped down. I didn't acknowledge her. She'd helped, yes, but she'd also enabled Beatrice's delusion long enough for it to become dangerous. I wasn't interested in forgiveness. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, came back with guilty verdicts on all counts: custodial interference, child endangerment, crossing state lines with intent to keep a minor from lawful custody. Federal charges meant federal sentencing guidelines. Beatrice showed no emotion when the verdict was read. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, as if this was happening to someone else. At sentencing 2 weeks later, the judge allowed victim impact statements. I kept mine brief. Beatrice Thorne spent months building a false narrative about my fitness as a parent. She documented normal childhood experiences and labeled them as abuse. She manipulated my son into doubting his own safety. She enlisted her sister in an abduction plot. And when caught, she showed no remorse, only conviction that she'd done the right thing. That conviction makes her dangerous. She cannot be trusted around children, including my son, ever again. The judge sentenced her to 6 years in federal prison. With good behavior, she might serve 4. But the criminal sentence was only part of what I needed. The family court proceedings happened concurrently. This was where permanent custody arrangements got formalized, where I could ensure Beatrice had no legal avenue to ever contact Leo again. Patricia filed for termination of any potential grandparent rights. Beatrice had tried to claim them through her deceased husband's tenuous connection to my ex-wife's family. The court rejected it based on lack of standing and her criminal conviction. We also filed for Leo's records to be sealed, his school enrollment to be flagged as requiring parental verification for any contact, and mandatory therapy to address the psychological manipulation he'd experienced. "You're building a fortress," Patricia observed during one preparation session. "I'm building safety." Same thing, I suppose. Though I'll note, Beatrice will likely appeal. The The conviction is solid, but she might try to reduce the sentence or claim new evidence of mental illness. Let her appeal. She'll still be in prison. She'll still have no contact rights. And every day that passes, Leo forgets more of what she tried to make him believe. The appeals never materialized. Beatrice's lawyer quietly advised her that fighting would only extend her sentence. She accepted the conviction without further contest, but her supporters didn't accept it as easily. Despite the restraining orders, whispers continued. Careful whispers that didn't quite cross into violation but kept the narrative alive. Poor Beatrice, driven to desperation by legitimate concern. If only someone had listened earlier. I decided to end that narrative permanently. I requested a meeting with the leadership of Riverside Community Church. Patricia advised against it. You don't owe them an explanation. But I wasn't offering an explanation. I was delivering a message. The meeting took place in the church conference room. 5 board members, all older adults who'd known Beatrice for years. They sat across from me with expressions ranging from defensive to curious. I placed a folder on the table. This contains the complete documentation of Beatrice Thorne's pattern of obsessive behavior spanning 2 decades, similar incidents at 3 different hospitals, complaints from families she inserted herself into, disciplinary actions she avoided by resigning before formal charges. This isn't a concerned woman who made one mistake. This is a pattern. The board president, a man in his 70s, opened the folder reluctantly, scanned the first few pages. His expression shifted. We weren't aware. You didn't want to be aware. You wanted to believe your friend was a martyr, but she's a predator who targets vulnerable families and convinces herself she's saving children who don't need saving. The hospital records prove it. The court transcripts prove it. And your continued support of her narrative makes you complicit. We have freedom of speech. You have freedom to speak. You don't have freedom to harass my family while doing it. The restraining orders stand. If your congregation wants to pray for Beatrice, do it quietly. But if I hear one more whisper campaign, one more suggestion that I'm an unfit parent, one more package left on my porch, I'll file civil harassment suits against every person involved, and I'll pursue them until you understand that supporting a convicted felon has consequences. Silence. Then the board president closed the folder carefully. We appreciate you bringing this information to our attention. We'll address it with the congregation. See that you do. I left the folder with them. Let them circulate it among Beatrice's most ardent supporters. Let them see in official documentation what their friend really was. The whispers stopped within a week. Caroline Hughes moved to a different neighborhood. The fellowship group dissolved. Social media posts defending Beatrice disappeared. It wasn't forgiveness or understanding. It was calculation. They'd realized continuing to support her would cost them more than they were willing to pay. Leo started sleeping through the night again. Started talking about school without mentioning other kids' questions. Started being 5 years old instead of a child processing adult dysfunction. One evening, we were building a blanket fort in the living room when he asked, "Is Mrs. Thorne ever coming back?" "No, she's not allowed to. Ever." "Good." He returned his attention to arranging pillows. I didn't like how she looked at me. "What do you mean?" Like she was trying to see something that wasn't there. Like she wanted me to be different than I am. That was more insight than I expected from a 5-year-old. But Leo had always been observant. He'd seen what I'd missed. That Beatrice's concern wasn't about him at all. It was about her need to be needed, her obsession with control disguised as care. "You're exactly who you're supposed to be," I said. "Nobody gets to tell you different." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to fort construction. I watched him play and felt something settle that had been displaced since the morning I'd found his bed empty. Not peace exactly, but certainty. Beatrice was contained, her supporters were neutralized, the legal mechanisms were in place to keep her away permanently. She'd wanted to save Leo from me. Instead, she'd destroyed herself trying. Beatrice made bail pending her transfer to federal custody. Her lawyer, expensive, connected, had argued she posed no flight risk given her age and community ties. The judge agreed to 2 weeks of supervised release before she began serving her sentence. I found out from Hayes. She's required to wear an ankle monitor, can't leave the county, can't contact you or Leo, but she's out. For how long? 14 days. Then she reports to the federal facility in Colorado. 14 days felt like 14 years. I knew the restraining orders were in place. I knew she was being monitored. But knowing didn't stop the tension that settled into my shoulders, the hypervigilance that had me checking locks 3 times before bed. Leo noticed. Is something wrong? Just work stuff. But he knew better. 5-year-olds always knew when adults were lying about their anxiety. The first week passed quietly. Beatrice stayed in her house. The ankle monitor confirmed she wasn't leaving, wasn't approaching our neighborhood. Her supporters had gone silent after the church meeting. Everything appeared contained. Then, on day 9, I came home from shift to find an envelope wedged in my front door. No postage. Hand-delivered. Inside was a single page, handwritten in Beatrice's precise script. Jude, I won't apologize because I'm not sorry. Everything I did was necessary. You'll understand that eventually, probably when Leo is older and the damage you've done becomes visible. I tried to prevent that. I failed, and now he'll suffer for it. You've won legally. You've turned everyone against me. You've made me into a monster. But you know the truth. You know you're inadequate. You know Leo deserves better. I'll be gone soon, but my concern for him won't disappear just because you've silenced me. Someone will notice eventually. Someone will see what I saw. You can't hide your failures forever. B. I read it twice, then called Patricia. She violated the restraining order. How? Left a letter at my house, hand-delivered. That's a violation of both the restraining order and her bail conditions. I'll notify the court immediately. She'll be remanded into custody. Wait. I stared at the letter again. Can we use this differently? What do you mean? She thinks she still has power. Let her keep thinking that for a few more days. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Jude, what are you planning? Nothing illegal. But I want her to know exactly what she lost before she disappears into federal prison. I need you to be very careful with whatever you're considering. I will be. I spent the next 2 days planning carefully. Not violence. I wasn't interested in physical confrontation. But Beatrice needed to understand that her narrative was finished. That her conviction wasn't just legal, it was absolute. On day 11 of her bail period, I drove to her house. Parked across the street where the ankle monitor would register my presence, but I wasn't technically violating the restraining order's distance requirements. I could see her through the front window, moving through her living room like a ghost in her own life. I waited until she noticed my car, saw her freeze, then move toward the window. Our eyes met across the distance. I held up my phone, made sure she could see me taking a photograph of her house, of her standing in the window, documenting her awareness of my presence. Then I made a call, not to her, she couldn't know who I was talking to, and watched her react. She moved away from the window. I stayed in the car. 15 minutes later, she emerged from her front door, stood on her porch, hands gripping the railing, the ankle monitor visible on her leg. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. I got out of my car, stood on the sidewalk, technically public property, no violation of the restraining order's 500-foot requirement since I wasn't approaching her residence. You can't be here, she called across the distance. I'm on a public street. I haven't come within 500 feet of you. You're intimidating me. I'm existing in the same general area. If that intimidates you, you should go inside. She didn't move. You think you've won? I don't think anything. The courts decided, the jury decided. 6 years, Beatrice, federal prison. And when you get out, Leo will be 11 years old. He won't remember you except as the person who tried to take him from his father. He'll remember that I cared when no one else did. He'll remember that you coached him to lie, that you made him doubt his own safety, that you used him as a tool for your obsession. Her face hardened. I tried to save him from you. You tried to possess him. There's a difference. You were failing him. I was raising him. Alone, imperfectly, but adequately. And you couldn't stand that. You needed him to need you. When he didn't, you manufactured a crisis to justify your interference. She came down 1 step from her porch. The ankle monitor beeped a warning. She was approaching the boundary of her allowed area. She stopped. I loved him. No. You loved the idea of him. You loved what saving him would have meant for your identity. But you never loved him enough to leave him alone when he was fine. He wasn't fine. He was 5. Healthy, happy, developing normally. But that didn't fit your narrative, so you invented problems. Documented normal childhood experiences as evidence of neglect. Convinced yourself so thoroughly that you couldn't see reality anymore. Her hands tightened on the railing. You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure you couldn't destroy ours in the process. When you get out, the restraining order will still be active. You'll be a convicted felon with a pattern of obsessive behavior documented across 2 decades. No court will ever grant you access to Leo. No judge will believe your concerns. You'll be nothing to us except a mistake we learned from. She stood there, trembling slightly. I could see her trying to formulate another argument, another justification, but there wasn't one. Everything had been said in court, decided by juries and judges, finalized in legal documents she couldn't appeal away. 3 more days, I said quietly. Then you disappear into the system you thought would validate you, and we move on like you never existed. I got back in my car, drove away slowly, watching her in the rearview mirror. She stood on her porch until I turned the corner, a figure diminishing into irrelevance. Patricia called that evening. The court was notified about the letter. Beatrice's bail has been revoked. She's been taken into custody immediately. Good. Jude, did you go to her house today? I drove past it, stayed on public property, didn't violate any orders. But you made sure she saw you. I made sure she understood that all her planning, all her documentation, all her conviction that she was right, none of it mattered. She lost completely. I wanted her to carry that into prison with her. Patricia sighed. That's not mercy. I'm not interested in mercy. I'm interested in Leo never having to wonder if she might come back, if her supporters might resurface, if her narrative might gain traction somewhere down the line. She needed to understand she's finished. And now she does. Now she does. I hung up and found Leo in his room, building something complex with blocks. He looked up when I entered. Is everything okay now? I sat down next to him. Yes, everything's okay. For real this time? For real. He went back to his blocks, satisfied. I watched him build, this small person who'd been turned into a battleground and emerged mostly intact. He'd need therapy, he'd need patience, but he'd survive this because Beatrice hadn't managed to poison the fundamental trust between us. She'd tried, she'd failed, and now she was gone.